Welcome to All Things Considered, where we rate movies not just on how they turned out, but also on how they got there. We score each film out of 10 in 3 categories: the quality of the movie itself, the behind-the-scenes drama among the cast and crew, and also the film's production woes, from studio meddling to on-set disasters. Then we average it all out for a final score that sums up both the movie you saw and the struggle to make it happen. Today we're taking a look at Solo, a Star Wars story, originally directed by Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, the creative duo behind 21 Jump Street and the Lego Movie. As production moved forward, their loose, improvisational style deviated away from the script, causing tension with writer Lawrence Kasdan and Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy, leading to the directing duo being replaced by veteran Ron Howard, who reshot nearly the entire movie. The result was a box office bomb that forced Lucasfilm to scrap its planned spin-off series and rethink the future of Star Wars entirely. So let's dive in and see how this movie truly scores with all things considered. Let's kick things off by taking a look at the behind-the-scenes drama, because in true Star Wars fashion, the real battle wasn't in a galaxy far, far away, it was on set. When Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy first began selecting directors for the sequel trilogy and spin-off films, she didn't want to hire workmen-like filmmakers who would simply play it safe and make the same movie again and again. She worried that audiences would start to see the franchise as nothing more than a money-making machine, which it kind of is. Instead, she set out to hire directors with their own unique style and vision, filmmakers who could take creative risks and bring a distinctive voice to the franchise. At the time, directors Lord and Miller had built a reputation for taking projects that sounded awful on paper, like 21 Jump Street and the Lego Movie, and turning them into clever, self-aware hits. They were known for sharp humor, fast pacing, and a willingness to experiment, all qualities Kennedy hoped would make Solo stand out from the traditional Star Wars movies. However, the directors relied heavily on improvisation and began to deviate away from the script. As is their process, they encourage actors to experiment, calling out alternate lines from behind the monitor and letting scenes evolve in the moment, a method that had worked wonders on their earlier comedies like the Jump Street films. But this didn't sit well with screenwriter and producer Lawrence Kasdan, writer of Empire, Jedi, Return of the Jedi, and The Force Awakens. Kasdan expected his dialogue to be delivered exactly as written, word for word. After he complained to Kennedy to keep the peace, Lord and Miller reportedly shot a few takes as scripted, then got additional takes with their improvised changes. The duo were also frustrated by Kasdan's presence on set, feeling that he had become a shadow director, there to keep them on track. You see, Lord and Miller believed they were making the kind of film they'd been hired to deliver, something bold, different, and risky. They saw Han Solo as a maverick and wanted the movie itself to reflect that spirit, fresh, unpredictable, and full of attitude. But every time they tried to push the story or tone in a new direction, they ran into resistance from Kasdan and Kennedy. Then there was the issue of Alden Ehrenreich. Ehrenreich? I feel like this is one of those things where everybody at home has a shot every time I mess up his name. Although you have to be legal drinking age. Okay, why don't I just have a shot every time I mess up his name? Oh, this is gonna get interesting. Who faced the impossible task of making Han Solo his own, while still capturing the essence of Harrison Ford. Lucasfilm reportedly grew concerned that his performance wasn't channeling enough of Ford's trademark confidence and swagger. To help, the studio brought in an acting coach, writer-director Maggie Kiley, who had previously worked with Lord and Miller on 21 Jump Street. Although Ehrenreich later claimed she was there to assist the entire cast, many believed her presence was meant to fine-tune his performance and bring it closer to what audiences expected from the iconic smuggler. I don't know why I went like this. However, it was also reported that it was actually oh, Jesus, I need another shot. Ehrenreich himself, who raised concerns to Lucasfilm about the screwball direction the movie was heading, due to all the improv, and it was negative, oh god. Shouldn't have had those shots, and it was negatively affecting his performance. During a hiatus in filming, Lucasfilm reviewed a rough assembly of the film and realized this was not the film they wanted to make. Lord and Miller believed they were hired to make a comedy, while Lucasfilm was looking for the duo to only add a comedic touch. Lucasfilm liked the script the way it was written and felt the duo were taking it too far off course. As a result of that, and everyone's inability to get on the same page, Kennedy would fire them with only weeks left on the shooting schedule. On the behind-the-scenes drama scale, this one earns an 8.7 out of 10, a major creative clash between the directors, writer, and studio, but without the outright hostility or infighting that defined the chaos of Fantastic Four or Justice League. Now let's take a look at the film's production woes, because when director Ron Howard came in, finishing Solo on schedule was its own kind of Kessel Run. Only this time, it definitely took more than 12 parsecs. I'll show myself that was horrible. Okay, I feel like if we're doing Han Solo, I gotta have my own little Chewbacca, although he looks a little bit more like an Ewok. You wanna be on camera? However, let's back up for a moment. Lord and Miller came from the world of lower budget comedies like 21 Jump Street and 22 Jump Street, where improvisation, experimentation, and a loose on-set atmosphere were how they worked. But Star Wars is an entirely different beast. I don't even know if you're in the frame. Are you even in the frame? I think you're in like the bottom of the frame. Okay, I'll set you down. But Star Wars is an entirely different beast. A massive, tightly scheduled production with hundreds of crew members, huge expensive sets, and a budget north of $250 million. Decisions have to be made quickly, and the directing duo were apparently often indecisive, possibly because they were working as a pair, which only complicated communication as they needed to both be in agreement about every decision. Plus, they weren't used to operating within such a massive high-pressure system, where every delay costs thousands of dollars and hundreds of crew members are waiting on your next call. Additionally, the duo's loose approach meant they weren't filming the usual mix of shots and angles you get on a film of this scale. Most scenes played out in one wide angle to allow for actors to improvise together, plus they'd grab a few extra shots to pad it out, which left the film's editor with far less options to cut together for each scene. A big issue for a blockbuster of this scale. Plus all the improving made setups drag on far longer than scheduled, as production began falling behind, as days stretched longer and longer. Crew members said they were getting paid a lot of overtime, something the first assistant director has to negotiate directly with production, aka Kathleen Kennedy. And after going back to the well one too many times, Kennedy finally lost her shit. Furious that the film was running both over schedule and budget. What she needed was a steady hand. Enter Ron Howard. Howard had originally been asked to direct The Phantom Menace, but turned it down as he felt it was too much pressure. After all, he would have been directing the first Star Wars film since Return of the Jedi. But by the time Solo came around, the landscape had changed. The prequels were released to a mixed reception, and Disney had already released 2 new Star Wars films. So the weight of reviving the franchise wasn't entirely on his shoulders this time. Just the pressure of saving a movie in freefall. He was a veteran director with a strong presence, and an even stronger work ethic. The irony, of course, is that when Kennedy first started hiring directors for the Star Wars sequels and spin-offs, this was exactly the type of director she wanted to avoid. Someone safe and traditional rather than bold and stylistic. Yet after the chaos of Solo shoot, that was precisely what she needed. When Howard signed on, he had barely over a week to prepare, inheriting department heads, actors, and sets he did not choose. The shoot was also extended for 4 more months, as he went on to reshoot 70% of the movie. Let me repeat that. Howard basically reshot the whole effing movie from scratch. That is unheard of, and God knows what that cost. One of the problems with extending the shoot, though, is that actors have other commitments. Dryden Voss, for example, was originally played by Michael K. Williams in a motion capture suit, since the character was envisioned as a human-alien hybrid that looked kind of like a purple mountain lion. However, by the time Solo shoot was extended, Williams had already committed to another project, and with Howard reshooting nearly the entire film from the ground up, his role had to be recast. Paul Bettany, who Howard worked with previously on A Beautiful Mind and The Da Vinci Code, would step into the role, and it would be reimagined as a human. So where does Solo land out of 10 for production woes? The original directors were fired deep in production, with only weeks left to shoot, before a new director was brought in to reshoot nearly the entire movie. However, the shoot wasn't a production nightmare like Jaws, nor were Lord and Miller humiliated like Trank was on Fantastic Four, sidelined and forced to watch a team try and fix his own movie. As a result, I'm going to go a little lower on this one, even though most of the film was reshot, and give it a 9.1 out of 10. The handover between Lord and Miller to Howard was done professionally. It wasn't dragged out like Justice League, with Whedon assuming more and more control over Snyder. And once Howard came in, he delivered a safe, watchable film. Now let's talk about the movie itself, a movie that really has no reason to exist. Fans weren't clamoring to see the Kessel Run, nobody cared how Han met Chewie, or how he won the Falcon from Lando, and certainly nobody ever wondered how Han got his last name, because we all just assumed Solo was his last name. At the time, Lucasfilm was developing an entire slate of standalone films centered on fan-favorite characters like Obi-Wan and Boba Fett, and to be fair, a Boba Fett movie made sense. Here was a cool, mysterious bounty hunter who barely appeared in Empire and Jedi, yet somehow became a cult icon. Exploring that character felt justified because we knew so little about him, and for 3 decades, fans have been clamoring for more. Han Solo, on the other hand, was different. We already knew who he was, and part of his charm came from that air of mystery about his past. By answering questions no one was really asking, a solo film risked demystifying one of Star Wars' most beloved characters. Take the Kessel Run. It's far more impactful imagining what it could be than actually seeing it. And when we finally do see it, with Han dodging a space squid inside a gravity well, it suddenly feels less legendary. Plus, I always like the idea that Han only boasts about doing the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs in episode 4 as a way to hype up a beat-up ship to squeeze a little more money out of Obi-Wan and Luke. Considering a parsec is a unit of distance, not time, and Han is talking about the Falcon's speed, to me this always felt like Han was just bullshitting two naive guys desperate for a starship and pulled the term parsec out of his ass. Then there's the problem of Alden Ehrenreich. Oh god, here we go again. Alden does turn in a good performance. Is he the spinning image of Harrison Ford? No. He's a little stiff, and his take on the character leans a little more into the bumbling side of things. Frankly, Anthony Gruber, who plays a young Harrison Ford in the age of Adeline, would have literally been perfect. If you've ever seen his Han Solo impression on YouTube, you know exactly what I mean. It's uncanny. The guy is Harrison Ford. Problem is, once you've watched it, it kind of lingers in the back of your mind throughout Alden's performance, knowing there was someone out there perhaps better suited to play the role. Also, visually, the entire film is dark and muddy, to the point where sometimes you can't really see what's going on. It's like someone smeared Vaseline over the lens and then turned off half the lights on set. Some of it, like the scenes on Mimban, I'm not taking a shot, look like they were shot through a dirty fish tank. However, the film does do some things right. Donald Glover's casting as Lando is pretty bang on, and Han shooting first at the end of the film was not only hilarious, but a great nod to fans over Lucas's changing that in the Greedo scene in the Episode 4 Special Edition. Frankly, the movie's not bad. It's just fine. It's enjoyable, but after you see it, you kind of forget about it. And that's probably why Lord and Miller were trying to elevate the material through improv. They thought the script was mediocre, which it kind of is. On a film quality scale, this one earns a 7.1 out of 10. It's a decent movie, but nothing special. However, when you factor in the studio firing the original directors, the film's writer shadowing those directors and treating his very mediocre script like scripture, complaining that they were deviating away from it to the higher-ups, and finally Ron Howard reshooting 70% of the film, all things considered, Solo rises to an 8.1 out of 10. It's hard to label this one a certified studio screwjob, considering the directors ignored the studio and deviated away from the script, leading to their dismissal. Instead, we're going to label this one a watchable mess. Alright, that's how I'd score it. Now it's your turn. What would you rate Solo: A Star Wars Story, all things considered? Thanks for watching, everybody, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more of Hollywood's untold stories and behind-the-scenes drama.